We're back to Sturgis Library for some more book recommendations. It's going to be summer sooner than we know, and Corey Fahrenkopf, Adult Services Reference Librarian Extraordinaire.
Yep.
You've got a lot of different books here, something for everyone.
Yeah.
And it is kind of that time where people kind of reconnect with reading as the summer starts to kick off and they're looking for some beach reads or they're looking for, some summer evening reads. What do we have today?
Ooh, we've got a lot of stuff. I should say books because stuff is very vague. So today I want to talk about 4 books I've read and 2 books I'm really excited to read because I feel like it's also really important to be like, this is what I'm excited about. So hopefully you will be excited about it. First we have A People's Future of the United States by Victor Laval and John Joseph Adams. Like I said, I haven't read it yet, but I'm super excited to read it. It's an anthology of short stories. The editors basically gave the prompt of, what do you think America's going to look like in the near future or the distant future, and see what you come up with. And it's got some of the best science fiction and fantasy writers of today doing it. There's some great humor in it. There's some really dark stuff in it. There's some utopia. There's some dystopia, climate change, social change. It's excellent, and I'm super excited to check it out.
Wow, that sounds great.
All right. And also, short stories are great because if you're sitting on the beach and you're like, I have half an hour or an hour, you can crank out one short story and have the experience of a full story as opposed to being like, I can get a chapter, I can get 2 chapters.
Right.
So I like to pitch that of this is why you should read short stories.
Excellent, great advice.
Yeah. Next we got Exit West by Mohsin Hamed. This one I did read. This is a very relevant story right now, and it's also very short. Or not very short, but it's a shorter novel, so you can crank this out in a couple of sittings, and that's always a wonderful feeling. But it's a story about a man and a woman who fall in love, but they're in a Middle Eastern country that is going through all the struggles that a lot of Middle Eastern countries are going through now. So it really deals with the refugee crisis, but it takes it in a magical realist sense where these 2 lovers essentially find a doorway that leads them out of their country that's currently being bombarded and under political upheaval, and they go through this door and it leads them to somewhere better. And all around the world, these doors are opening up, so all these refugees are able to kind of move away from these imperiled areas and keep moving through different areas of the world. So you'll see them kind of go from the Middle East to Europe to America, and these doors are all over the place. So it's kind of a cool look at how refugees are. It's kind of it's a good look into how refugees are affected by what's going on politically around the world right now, and also thinking of positive outcomes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful too.
It's a big book club book right now, so everyone's kind of grabbing it, and it's beautifully written. Next we got Red Clocks by Lainey Zumas. She's one of my favorite writers as far as line-to-line writing goes. She writes beautiful sentences, a lot of really short ones, and some of the sections are broken up in such a way that it's almost like poetry, but it's not poetry, it's still very much fiction. But this is a more contemporary version of a Handmaid's Tale sort of story. It's in the future, slightly in the future, and it's a America where abortion is now illegal. It follows a woman who is a school teacher and a biographer. She's writing a biography of a kind of obscure female polar explorer, and she's also trying to have a child at this time. But she's not really able to conceive naturally, which is a big struggle point for her. And one of her students gets pregnant. And her student also doesn't know what to do at the moment, and they kind of have to work together to support each other. And it's a beautifully told story, and it's also kind of going back to A People's Future of the United States. It's kind of looking at the possibilities of what could happen, but beautifully written.
Wow.
We've got The Cassandra by Sharma Shields. Yeah. This one is a retelling of the Cassandra myth. You know the Cassandra myth? It's basically a woman who is cursed she's able to tell the future completely accurately, but no one will ever believe her. Yeah, and it applies that idea to the people who are developing the nuclear bombs before World War II.
Wow.
So the woman who's who is working in the factory under the scientist is like, hey, I see all the destruction that's going to happen. I'm warning you, and no one will listen. So you get a really interesting view into that section of history, into the development of the bomb and the people who are working on it, and also the idea of like prophecy and essentially like early warnings and how they're ignored. So cool read there.
Great.
This is what I'm reading right now. And this is for all the horror fans out there, because I know there's so many of you. And I actually hope there's tons of you. That'd be great. Nathan Ballingrud's Wounds. It's a collection of short stories. The title story, Wounds, was made into a movie called Wounds with Armie Hammer in it. That's coming out soon. But it's 6 stories that are somewhere between Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft, Stephen King, and Joe Hill.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's got great atmosphere. He borrows a lot from noir literature, detective literature. Right now, the story I'm reading is like a pirate narrative, and it's like swashbuckling adventure meets this crazy mythos of these otherworldly angels. And, it's great. I can't speak highly enough about it. The language is beautiful. The atmosphere is super, super tense, super dark. It's got that kind of Poe, House of Usher feel sometimes. And it's being made into a movie, and there's nothing better than reading the story than watching the movie. So that's this guy. And then finally, we have The Heavens by Sandra Newman. So Sandra Newman is an amazing writer, and she's hilarious. Everything she writes has a good amount of like witty, dark humor in it. This is the other book that I haven't read yet, but this is the one that's going on my nightstand pretty soon once I finish Wounds. So The Heavens is equal parts a love story, what's the word I want to say? A meditation on the power of dreams and how that can affect your reality, and also a bit of historical fiction about the Dark Lady of Shakespearean sonnets. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in it, but it's essentially there's a woman who meets a guy at a party, they fall in love, and she starts telling him about these reoccurring dreams she's had all her life where she basically inhabits the body of the dark woman from Shakespeare's sonnets. And at first, it doesn't seem like it's a super big deal, but whenever she wakes up, or as the story progresses, she starts waking up and the world around her is changing in accordance to her dream, and it seems like it's heading towards some sort of catastrophe, maybe. But I'm always into stuff that talks about like the world of Shakespeare and how it can like mimic or be mirrored in contemporary life. Right. So I'm pretty excited about it, and like I said, her humor is amazing. So if you're looking for a funny read with a little bit of historical stuff and some dream theory, give it a read.
So these are very different from each other.
Yes.
And you have a service here that is just wonderful for the library. Folks come in and they have no idea what they want.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about how Corey's book recommendations can work for the patrons.
So, I guess the first thing I really need to mention along those lines is there's a certain selection of books that basically everyone knows that they don't need me to recommend to them. Like right now, everyone's reading Where the Crawdad Sings, and I read it, was excellent, got a great sense of place. But you don't need me to come here and be like, read this book that everyone else is talking about right now. And the same thing for James Patterson or like Nelson DeMille or Nora Roberts. Like people who read these books know about them beforehand. So I have to take everything that's kind of below these like super well-known names and be like, hey, these books are also excellent. I know you like, if I know you like Where the Crawdad Sings, I could give you Lily King's Euphoria. Or if I know you like James Patterson's more action-packed, mystery, noir, thrillery kind of stuff, I could say, like, here's Laird Barron's Blood Standard. So it's about figuring out what people already enjoy and connecting them to the other fiction that A, they might not have known existed, or B, might present to them a different angle of that type of fiction, which I think is super important because like if everyone's reading the exact same thing, the narrative is very condensed and doesn't really include everyone. Right. Whereas if you're getting people to read varied texts that are all like in a style that they enjoy, like I'm not trying to force like, here, read this super weird book that I don't think you're gonna like because all you read is historical romance, that just like wouldn't be fair. Right. But that's kind of my thought on it. But so what people do is I sit at my desk, which is in the middle of the library. I've got my recommended shelf of usually 6 books, which most of these will be on it. And if people are looking at them, I try to like pitch the books to them. If they're not, I'll like shout to them across the library, "Hey, you're looking for a book?" I don't actually do that. But I basically figure out like, hey, what do you like? And what are the genres? What are the recent writers who you've read that you've enjoyed? And then based on that, I generally be able to know like, hey, you'll like this, or you like realistic fiction and you like musical elements, read Aja Gable's The Ensemble. And that's one I recommend a lot. Or if you like politics and coming of age stories, you can read Heather Abel's The Optimistic Decade. And those two have been like flying off the shelves, so that's pretty great. But yeah, I mean, that's generally how I go about it. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Yeah.
And what I liked about it is that you have the innate ability to steer somebody into a novel that they might not have picked up.
Yeah, because you don't.
Because The Ensemble was very, very good, and I
Right?
probably would have not picked that up.
Yeah.
And you had recommended that on our last visit. So fantastic.
Great.
Thanks so much, Corey.
You're welcome, Paula.